Hi, this is Randy Pilata from InterSystems. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. And welcome to today's presentation on crafting your healthcare data strategy. And I am very grateful that you all have taken time to join us today. And so we're going to go ahead and dive right in. And I'm just doing a quick audio check. And so, all right, we'll go ahead. Oops, sorry. Need to share my screen. All right. So many of you may be familiar, but for those that aren't, InterSystems, we have been enabling the sharing of healthcare information and helping our partners craft their healthcare data strategy for several decades. We are in our 46th year of existence. And this slide, just, I included just to give a sense of the types of organizations that we have helped craft a healthcare data sharing strategy. And up at the top, you find our application partners, and that's our primary focus today, which many of you may be aware. The majority of InterSystems, business is through partnerships with other vendors, and specifically where they use our technology and our knowledge and our partnership to help them craft strategies and then manifest those strategies into running technology that enables the sharing of healthcare information at scale. We are perhaps most famous for our relationship with Epic, and you see them right here at the top middle part of the slide. But we've been doing this sort of work with healthcare vendors of all shapes and sizes and all levels of maturity for decades now. So everything from brand new startups, 2 and 3 person employee companies, all the way up to the Optums and Epics of the world, which are the 2 largest healthcare IT vendors on the planet, and everywhere in between. We do also work directly with the healthcare provider organizations, the health plans, and we power the largest health information exchanges. And so we are well informed by the different sort of verticals within healthcare IT in terms of what the needs are. And we respond to those requirements, again, both with technology, but also with a transfer of knowledge. We do this work every day, all day. And so the point today is much like we advise and consult and meet with some of the folks mentioned on this slide, we'd like to introduce this topic to you all today and would love the opportunity to follow up with you all after today's presentation if you think we can help. Simple as that. So when it comes to crafting your healthcare data strategy, why do we want to do this, right? Well, because data, especially now with the advancement of the large language models and the advancement that we've seen in the last couple of years with data science and machine learning, which has just opened up a whole new, previously unthought of, set of opportunities for us to deliver on. With solutions to meet the needs of the caregivers out there. Well, data is more important in November of 2024 than ever before. And so no matter what size vendor you are, initially crafting your healthcare data acquisition and healthcare data sharing strategy, but then continually refining it. So some of you out there in the audience, you maybe have well over a decade or 2 decades of experience doing this sort of thing. As you probably are already doing, continually revisiting the advancements that have been made on this topic, making sure that you're well informed, and then using that information to just make decisions about how you might evolve your healthcare data strategy. These are the things that we talk about with our partners on a daily basis. Now, of course, healthcare data acquisition, it is often much more than meets the eye. And why is that? And some of you may have a deep understanding. Others, especially folks that are new to healthcare IT, they sort of, I hear it all the time. Well, everything's FHIR, right? Can't I just get all that data via FHIR? Well, no. As awesome and as promising and with all the tremendous potential that FHIR has already delivered on and will continue to deliver on, the reality is even with market-leading EMRs and name brands and electronic medical record systems that you're very, very familiar with, today in November 2024, there is many ways to get data just from an instance of an EMR, and we'll expand far beyond just an instance of an EMR in a second. But if you look at one of the market leading EMRs, yeah, you can get the data. You can get it via HL7 version 2. You can get it from CCD or CDA documents. They have proprietary APIs. They do have some FHIR support. Many of the leading EMRs have sort of sidecar data lakes or clinical data repositories where they ETL that data over. Oftentimes that's once a day, so you can do SQL extracts there, especially for like claims information. You have X12, and then when all else fails, you could do the fun sort of screen scraping and all that kind of stuff. This is just one EMR, and there's actually more than what's listed on the slide here. And my point being, especially for the folks that are newer to this, the idea that, isn't everything available via? No, it's not. Like, for instance, there's data that you can only get from a proprietary API, right? There's data, especially when we talk about real time, you're only going to get real time data in an HL7 V2 feed, and so on and so forth, right? And so that's a big part of the challenge when you look even at a single instance of an EMR. And like I said, we're going to expand far beyond that. And then you start thinking about, okay, well, where nowadays, what are my options to get the data, right? And so the sources of data now, we've got at least 5 options that you have to be well versed in. And you really need to understand, what is the difference between these sources of data, because there's a fair amount of overlap in the data that's available from these 5 sources. But then, like any Venn diagram, there's also the stuff that doesn't overlap, right? And so when you look at the sources of data, the first one, and maybe the most mature model, but it certainly has its challenges, right? And we've been doing this one the longest, would be direct connections to a hospital. Okay, I sell my software to General Hospital, and General Hospital has an EMR up and running. So let me go talk to General Hospital. Let me get their integration team on the phone and tell them what data I need. And then their integration team will set up an HL7 feed or give me access to a FHIR endpoint or whatever it may be. That is as valid an option today as it was 10 years ago and 10 years before that. And we continue to see that approach used all the time, right? But there's 4 other approaches that you have to be aware of and you have to understand. There are health information exchanges stood up in almost every state in the United States today. And in fact, in the larger states, there are many health information exchanges. And those state and regional exchanges are all evolving. They're all looking to continually expand the services they provide. And in many cases, not in all cases, but they do have a business model that supports vendors accessing the data that they have, right? Then, of course, there's the emergence of the so-called QHIN, and that is really just getting started, the Qualified Health Information Network. And that's really just kind of taking off right now, but it does suggest, and of course, as you might expect, the federal government's involved here in sort of standardizing what it means to be a qualified health information network. And a number of entities are raising their hands and going through that sort of certification process. Many of you are well aware of the national networks. These are quite famous these days. And you have Care Quality, which is generally often associated with a great way to get access to data from facilities that use Epic, but it certainly goes far beyond just Epic. The eHealth Exchange, which is a national network that happens to be operated by InterSystems for whatever that's worth, and is a very, very large, many tens of millions of United States citizens have their data in the eHealth Exchange. And then Commonwealth, which at least initially was sort of, commonly associated with Cerner, but they have also expanded far beyond just having Cerner as or sites that use Cerner as a data source, right? So you have these 3 national networks. They're an option too. Then you get into the data resellers, and they may have different names. They may not refer to themselves as a data reseller, but many of you may be familiar, and they all have kind of unique business models and their own spin on this sort of thing. but Bamboo and Redox and Truveta, there are many others out there. Then some of them are sort of niche players. Others are trying to be, more broad in their charter in terms of who they might serve. But you want to research and get familiar with these folks. Bamboo has had great success in the health plan space, amongst other arenas. Truveta, amongst other things, seems to be focused on the research space, right? And so that's yet another option. So that's at least 5 different sources of data. And so, knowing that that's out there is great, but how do I distill this down into information that's actually going to inform my strategy? Well, it starts at the high level. What are the variables, right? And here are the 4, as I see it anyways, the 4 variables that you want to consider as you evaluate those different types of sources against each other. So the first is purpose of use. Different sources of information, even it might be the same information, but they have different ways that you're actually allowed to use that data, right? And so for the national networks right now, they all support point of treatment, meaning, if you're going to use this data in a way that assists or enables a clinician at the point of care, that's in scope for their purpose of use. But not all of the national networks today have support for payment and operations as a use case for the data. That's going to evolve. The second variable is the cost, right? So I mentioned the sort of most mature model is direct connections to the EMR, or the integration team at the hospital, right? And while that may give you the sort of largest breadth of data, it also, in many cases, is the highest cost, right? Because depending on your strategy for rolling out your application, what that entails is essentially one hospital network or one, clinic network at a time, going in and meeting them and getting access to their integration team and sort of standing up those connections. And that can be costly in terms of dollars and cents, but also in terms of human capital and time, right? Then another variable is latency, okay? And so if I am tapping into a health information exchange, well, is their data refreshed in real time? Or is it refreshed once a day or once a week? If I have, even within a direct connection to a hospital, maybe they give you a couple options. One of those options is an HL7 feed, and that has some cost associated with it. And another option might be a SQL pull from their clinical data repository. Well, the HL7 feed is likely to be in real time. The SQL pull, that might be, up to 24 hours stale, so to speak, or late. You have to factor that in. And so for many of you out there, maybe 24 hours is perfectly fine. It's an acceptable latency period. For others, maybe real time is where you need to be, right? And then finally, the fidelity. So again, the national networks are a tremendous accelerator because you get access to especially if you hit all 3 of them, you have access to the vast majority of the United States population has some data available in them. The question is, do they have all the data that your application needs to be successful, right? And this is that sort of, decision tree, right? So if I'm building a mobile app, and I need access to data from General Hospital, I need to work through these 4 variables and say to myself, okay, well, for my mobile app to be successful doing what it needs to do, what is the latency that's acceptable? If I get my data from the national networks, is that all of the data that I need? Or from the resellers, is that all of the data that I need for my application and my user experience to be satisfactory? Maybe, maybe not. If it isn't, maybe, what you need to do is go broker those connections direct with the healthcare institutions. That's going to get you the data you need, but that's going to have a different cost equation associated with it, right? And so those variables then feed in, and then what you need to think of is, okay, well, what are the formats that you can accept? Are you equipped to process a FHIR bundle? Are you equipped to handle a CCD document? Are you equipped to handle a real-time HL7 feed? And then similarly on the outbound side, what formats must you make the data available in? Okay, so this is the sort of decision tree that you need to work through. And again, we're happy to meet with you all and kind of coach you through this sort of thing. And so now, just to kind of put this in practice, InterSystems, we also sell solutions, right? And so we have to make these same sort of decisions for our product. And so let me show you how, the sort of abstract discussion turns into actual running technology, because that is a piece of it. Is that not just, understanding where and what type of source will I get the data, but then I need to have technology that accommodates those decisions, right? And so a good way to sort of bring this to life is just a brief little demonstration of one of the solutions we sell, which is HealthShare. And so the first thing, that we would want to talk about is, okay, well, and this applies to you in terms of, well, what's your data model? And obviously, you all know what your data model is. And, how broad is it? Is it really specific to something like medications, in which case you're getting very, very granular on medication info? Well, in our case, our data model, and we're talking about our product HealthShare, it's providing a longitudinal care record, so it's pretty expansive. And so, we need to be thinking about, where are we going to get care delivery data? Where are we going to get health plan data? What's the best technology that we need to offer our customers to accommodate those sorts of things, right? And then it gets into, like I said, not just, okay, now I know what my data model is, but then how do I want to populate it? And then how do I want to make that data available? And so for us, what that means is we have decided that we need to accommodate sort of direct pulls from the EMRs. Well, that means, going back to a previous slide, that we need FHIR support. We need CCD and CDA support. We need HL7V2 support, right? We also want to be able to pull from the national networks. Well, that means we need to support the APIs that allow us to be a client of those national networks. We need claims data. So, okay, we need X12 support, right? And so on and so forth. And so in our case, it just so happens that we are a technology provider that provides that specific technology, so we use it ourselves. But of course, you out there, you may or may not be using InterSystems technology. One way or another, you want to kind of have your list of what are the inbound formats. And nowadays, what I see are a lot of folks starting out, we're going to do everything with FHIR, and that's great until you encounter a scenario where the data that you need to make your user experience what you want it to be isn't available via a FHIR endpoint anywhere. Now, all of a sudden, gotta come up with, a plan B and a plan C. Okay, well, that's on the inbound side. Then on the outbound side, for our application, we have a web-based viewer. You'll see all this in a second. And then, an analytics projection, and then we have an interoperability. So what I'm going to do now is just to kind of bring this to life, a very, very brief demo, and then I'll show you how, once you see our technology, you see what our challenge is, what have we done about it? And what is our strategy that we then offer to our partners to inform their strategy? And so with that, I'll pop out here, just a very, very brief demo to kind of bring that last slide to life here. Our product starts, I've already mentioned, we've got this data model, right? Here's another way to view it. I'm going to show you a bunch of ways to view this data model. But as you can see, we got good coverage. And so what we know is a lot of this data is available via HL7V2, via CCD, via CDA, and via FHIR. Okay, well, great. In our case, for our business, what we decided is we can't just pick one of those. We've got to accommodate all of those. And so what our product does is exactly that. And so to bring that to life, what I'm kind of going to do is keep referring back to this slide here. Let me just go ahead and pull it over. Just going to very, very quickly bring this to life. So that data model that's at the heart, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that we make that available. The 3 on top here, the web-based viewer, the analytics projection, and the 4th one down, which is interoperability. So the first place I'll show you this data model, if I go ahead, we have something called a clinical viewer. And so a clinician can log in and search for a patient. And this is all, of course, simulated fake data. But what our product does is we have Marla Gonzalez here. And this row here, the underlined rows, these indicate 4 different sources of data. Now, for us, We don't want our user to have to know the details of the ways each of these 4 systems may be sending us our data. More on that in a second. But what I will do is I'm going to click the top link, and what you see here is a longitudinal care record for this patient. Now, this has been populated via HL7, via CCD, via CDA, FHIR, and so on and so forth. But this isn't about a presentation of HealthShare, so I'm going to move real quick. And what I'm going to do is show you how our data strategy, what we did to bring it to life through technology. So one element of data that's pretty easy to track is an allergy. And we see here we got a penicillin allergy with mild severity. Okay, well, that's interesting. Another place where you see our data model is it's available in SQL format, relational format, so I can query it. And lo and behold, I have an allergy table, and here's that very same mild allergy. Okay, interesting. I've now seen the same piece of data twice in 2 very, very different ways. Third way I might interact with that data, maybe I have a FHIR endpoint. That's what we have here, and I can go ahead and hit that FHIR endpoint, and lo and behold, here's that penicillin allergy, mild severity. Okay, so what did we just do there? Well, we just showed you the same data available via a web-based viewer in the analytics projection, and then via FHIR, I could show you CCD or CDA or whatever it is, and that's all well and good. But now to focus on the inbound side. So the decisions that we've made as a technology vendor is to allow working with multiple formats. So I mentioned the SQL pull from the clinical data repository. So let's start there. Let's pretend that that's one of the ways I'm getting data from my application. And so what I'm going to do to simulate an update to this allergy, I actually have an instance of a Microsoft SQL Server database. Great product, okay? And then let's pretend that's the backbone of a CDR out there at a hospital I'm connected to. And some doctor changes the severity. Say, you know what? No, they're not mildly allergic. They're severely allergic, right? And so that change happens, and one of the ways we're getting data is a pull from the CDR. So what's going to happen now is when I go back and look at our application, I pull that patient's record again, and what you see here, last time it was mild, now it's severe. If I go to the FHIR projection, last time it was mild, I hit the endpoint again, it comes back, now it's severe. If I go to the analytics projection of that same data, last time I ran the query, you can see it was mild. I run the query again, it's severe. So what we've decided to do, of course, is make that data available in a multitude of formats. But getting back on the inbound side, let me just quickly kind of finish up the point here. We also support HL7 messages. So this would simulate what you would get if you were a direct connection to the EMR's HL7 feed. Then we support CCD documents, right? And so I can run those through a CCD pipeline. So for us, the decision we had to make is, okay, well, allergies. We're staying on allergy information. We need to be able to receive that. I showed you pulling from a SQL repository. Well, HL7 looks a heck of a lot different than that. This is, for those that aren't initiated, this is what an allergy looks like in an HL7 message. If I look at a CCD document, this is what an allergy looks like, and this is not for the faint of heart, but many thousands of lines into this thing, you're going to find allergy information. And there it is. There's 3 allergies. So the whole point of what we're doing with our healthcare data strategy is we've decided that our customers, we don't want them to have to know or care about what type of format the data arrived in. So last time I hit that allergy table, I got 20 rows back. When I query it again, I get 24 back. And what we've done as a vendor is we have abstracted the idea from our customers that these 3 rows arrive via a CCD document, this row arrived via an HL7 message, and this row here arrived via a SQL pull. These are the strategic decisions that we've made that then manifest themselves into technology that we've built to enable our product to thrive, right? And this is basically what you are all wrestling with too, is what are the same decisions that you need to make. But then, once you've made those decisions, you want to be able to market them, right? And you want to tell a compelling story to your customers about why this makes their life better. So again, just kind of staying on that thread, what we've done here is we've taken those adapters, and now what we do is we have accelerators. And so we offer to our customers, once we encounter an EMR out there and we implement that connection, we don't just throw away that logic or not reuse it. We do reuse it site to site as an accelerator. We would encourage you to consider doing the exact same thing, right? And so for us, what we're able to offer our customers is accelerators for all of the different EMRs. This list grows week by week as we encounter new solutions out there. And then frankly, we market this, and we would encourage you to do the same thing. Every single connection you make is a story that you can tell to the next prospect about how you can give them a better user experience, right? And so that's one of the things we did. Then what we do is we describe to our customers our model, and you should do the same thing, right? At the end of the day, in many cases, what happens is this integration turns into a profit center for our partners because there's value in it, right? Your customers will have a better user experience if your application is working off of a richer data set. So make sure you're thinking about how to tell that story, and quite frankly, how to turn it into a profit center. You're out there doing this connectivity work. There's value in it, so you should assign value to it, and your customers will invest, right? And so you should be thinking about how you describe that to your customers. The way we describe it is via a discussion in a slide that looks like this, where we have a company mission. In our case, is to reduce the time, cost, and complexity of healthcare data acquisition. The way that we do that, we talk about the technology, like the product I just demoed for you. Then we talk about some of the mentoring. I am in the sales engineering department, and so we do mentoring, not all that different from what I'm doing right now. Then our company made a decision that we have a professional services offering that has the so-called EMR playbook. And that EMR playbook, as you can see here, it's not actually a book, it's a process with a clever name. But where that EMR playbook sort of, brings value is this whole discussion around the strategy for leveraging the different sources of data. We can provide guidance on that. We do this every day, all day. So, what are those different variables, and how might that play out in your world, right? And then the actual work that they do, getting back to those accelerators we have, we made a decision that as soon as we see a site and we connect to any one of these systems, our decision is that we don't want the second and third and fourth customer, or even the first for that matter, to have to pay so-called list price, from an hour standpoint. So even if it takes 100 hours or whatever it is the first time to work through the process of connectivity, our decision is that we want to drive down that cost by reusing that logic across the entire customer base. Your strategy may or may not look and feel like that. Of course, it's your business, and you may have different reasons for kind of deviating from what I'm talking about. But where I'll leave you, if I go back, I think it's really sort of important that you really think about these variables with respect to those different sources of data out there. The direct connection to the hospital versus the national network versus the data reseller. All of them have different values for purpose of use, cost, latency, and fidelity. So research that, understand it, and use it to inform your healthcare data strategy. And so with that, thank you so much for joining today. I will be happy to hang out if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we sure would love to meet with you after today and follow up with you directly. All right. Well, I guess no questions for today. So just thank you all for attending. And I am here all the time. We look forward to the opportunity to meet with you and discuss your specific healthcare data strategy. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.